Good afternoon, everyone. Quick look here at the North American equity markets, and it was a little bit of a mixed picture with the Dow as well as the TSX trading a little bit lower, S&P a little bit higher, but the real movement to the upside was within the Nasdaq and also the Russell 2000, which of course have been under a little bit of pressure as we continue to look at the rising rate environment. But that was not the case today. The Nasdaq was up by 1.5%. and the Russell 2000 up by 1.13%. So in other words, growth and momentum led the markets higher today. And we actually saw some nice outperformance with a few tech companies highlighted. Apple, for one, that was up by 2%. It got an upgrade to a buy over at UBS, citing long-term positives as it relates to the demand for the iPhone. We also had some of the FANG complex names up higher. Facebook was up by about 2.2%. And some other company-specific stories to watch. Lululemon reported their numbers. The numbers looked good, but guidance perhaps a little bit conservative. And of course, there's still some concern surrounding a weaker same-store sales number, specifically, of course, the in-store purchases for obvious reasons. CHWY, the online pet retailer, CHWY is the ticker there. That was up by 5.4%. They did have a nice, strong quarter. And another interesting name perhaps to take a look at was Harley-Davidson. That was up by 6%. That, of course, has seen quite a bit of movements during the pandemic. That stock was actually upgraded to an outperform over at R.W. Baird. In terms of other areas of the market to watch, as I mentioned, growth did outperform value. So you saw a little bit of downward pressure in terms of some of the financials as well as energy and industrials. But energy is up 29% over the first quarter. We are, of course, closing out the first quarter. Industrials up by 11%. And it did also seem as though the, of course, energy shares under a little bit of pressure with WTI down by 2.3% today. Gold was up by 1.8%. In terms of some positive news that would be, of course, supportive for the markets or risk on assets, the China manufacturing data and services came in above expectations. In fact, a 3 and 4 month high respectively. ADP jobs numbers came in a little bit better than expected in the United States, and and Chicago manufacturing data also the best numbers we've seen since July of 2018. So some positive economic data, definitely, which added a bit of support for the markets. And also, of course, continued positive news surrounding the vaccine in the United States. News that Pfizer-BioNTech's vaccine has 100% efficacy in adolescents, so 12 to 15-year-olds. Pretty amazing there. Also, we heard that from the Biden administration, President Biden, that their infrastructure plan will be $2.2 trillion in spending over the next 8 years on bridges, paid for by $2 trillion of tax increases with that corporate tax rate they want to increase from 21% to 28%. There is the view, though, from strategists that in order to get that done, they will need to bring moderate Democrats on side. So maybe it's 25%. It was a bit of a non-event because the White House had already released the plan. Away from that, interestingly here as well, when you think about economic prosperity and the possibility for growth, there are reports that President Biden will let President Trump's H-1B visa ban expire. So that could be interesting, a nice tailwind for economic growth going forward. Away from that, as we think about those U.S. markets, do keep in mind Friday will be closed, but we will still get the release of the most recent jobs report. 650,000 jobs are expected to be created. Looking at the Canadian market, the TSX was down mildly after closing lower yesterday. Best performing sector was healthcare, which of course is mostly comprised of cannabis companies here in Canada. That on the back of news that New York Governor Cuomo signed a marijuana legalization bill. Financials a little bit lower. Brookfield Asset Management was downgraded to neutral over Credit Suisse. Energy was weaker, following WTI lower, but at the same time, Canaccord is the latest company to increase their oil price forecast and also increase the price targets across the board. Shopify, from a stock-specific perspective here, Shopify was up by 5%, initiated a buy over a Stifel, $1,200 price target. That's US dollars. It closed at $1,100, so some nice upside there. Also, Dollarama was up by 6%, some strong results. They increased their dividend by 7%, and they are planning to grow their store network more than the street had been anticipating, more than the company management had indicated in the past. So clearly a positive there. BlackBerry was down by 10%. Revenue came in less than expected. And we did see a little bit of weakness in the telecom sector, with the exception of entertainment. CGX up by 2.3%. And there was some comments that perhaps there could be a little bit of competitive issues with the Rogers-Shaw deal. Away from that, I would just highlight that Canadian January, yes, we're a bit delayed here, January GDP came in above expectations at 0.7%. That does follow a December number of 0.1%, so some improvement there. And then, of course, we have to keep our eyes on the COVID cases that are increasing here in Canada, because there's concern amongst economists that despite the fact that we are showing an improvement on the economic front, that perhaps another wave might slow that down. We of course have Premier Ford hinting that we could be on the eve of another lockdown being announced. We've also heard from Prime Minister Trudeau that we could expect another 5 million extra doses of Pfizer by the end of June. That is after Pfizer is moving up their deliveries. And then also, of course, we have heard from Trudeau that he is saying that Canadians should take whatever vaccine they can get. I will leave it there. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.